before I do that, let's talk about current for a moment. And again, we're talking about current flow or amperage. We're not talking about volts. You can use 6 volt, you can use 12 volt, you can use 1.5 volts for that matter from batteries. The current flow, the amperage, is what's important. Now, there are formulas out there I think you'll find to calculate square millimeters of surface or square inches of surface area and calculate how much amperage to push to the part based on the square inches or millimeters of the part to be plated. I don't do any of that. I don't bother with that. I use my experience and I watch the bath, and I can pretty much tell by now, because I've been doing this for a while, how I'm dealing with the current flow. Now, if you push too much current too fast to the part, what you'll see happening is a lot of bubbles will occur. That's hydrogen off-gassing. And you'll also plate the part too fast, and you end up with a buildup of zinc that will come out looking very coarse and very rough, and it will lack adhesion. And then you'll end up brushing that off, wire brushing that off, and doing it again. I would rather go a little bit on the low side with current rather than the high side. So the beauty of this power supply, it gives me an idea of what kind of current flow the part is drawing at that point. So let's go ahead and turn this on. And you can see again, this is the current, the left dial. This is the voltage. So right now, if I don't do anything else, I'm pushing 0.65 amps, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5. You can see it changing a little bit in 2 volts. Now, is that right for that part? I don't know. It feels a little bit high, so what I'm going to do, and I have a fine adjustment and a coarse adjustment, I'm going to bring this power down just a little bit. You can see there. I'm going to bring it up to about 0.38, 0.40 somewhere. And I'm going to watch the bath. And I'm not sure I can show you that. Let me see how close I can get in here for you. I'm not sure you'll be able to see, but the part now is just starting to show a little what I'll call whitening, W-H-I-T-E, whitening, and that means that it is taking zinc. If I push it really, really hard, in other words, I push current to it, they'll start turning medium to dark gray. What I'm looking for is a nice white coating. So right now, I think I'm pretty close. Might be a little bit on the light side. So I can bump up the current, give you a little bit broader perspective here. So you can see the readout on the front of the power supply. I might be a little bit on the light side, and again, I have a fine adjustment here. Coarse is on the right, fine is on the left, so I can bring it up or down. You'll notice the voltage is changing also. I disregard that totally. So I'm going to leave it at about 0.40 amps, 1.3 volts, and I'm going to let it run for a while. Now, some people will talk about plating in 5 or 10 minutes. If you push current fast enough, you might be able to achieve that. Some parts I'll let run for 45 minutes or an hour. And in the middle of that process, I will pull the part out, I will clean it, I will do a quick wire brush, inspect it, and then decide whether to change the voltage at that point before we're done. So what I'm going to do is let this run at this setting, 0.40 amps. I'm going to let it run for, probably 10 to 15 minutes or so. I'll bring you back. We're going to pull it out. I'll be wearing my gloves, and we'll do a visual. We'll probably wire brush it lightly, and then decide if our current flow at that point is where I want it to be. And I think you can probably see the part is turning a bit white, which is what I want to have happen. So we'll bring it back here in 10, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. It's been about 15, 18 minutes now, and we're going to go ahead and pull the part out and we'll take a look at it. I did fiddle around off camera a little bit with the power. I bumped it up to 0.45, and that was a little bit too high. As you'll see in the part in a minute when I pull it out, it tended to start building up too quickly, the zinc. So I pulled the power back to 0.38, as you see here at this point right now. Now watch what happens to the readout when I go ahead and pull this out of the bath. Watch. That tells us that the current is flowing. I'm going to go ahead and just disconnect the power from the part and see if I can unwrap this. Now, and I talked about that a moment ago about the buildup. I think you can see what I mean right there. That's a classic example of pushing too much current too fast. See that kind of that film? Now that's salvageable. What I will do is I will take this over and rinse it in clean water, and then I'm going to use this clean wire brush, and I'm going to do an initial quick wipe down. This, by the way, was, when I say clean, I washed this in acetone and brake cleaner, so I know the bristles don't have any contamination on them. And we're going to do a quick wipe down of this and see what it looks like. So I'll be right back. I have rinsed this in clean water, wiped it off with a clean cloth, and you can see I removed the hanger wire just to make it a little easier. And now what I'm going to do is just do a little quick initial brushing with this. This is a fine brush. You could use steel wool for this also. If you use steel wool, though, you're probably going to have to re-clean the part because steel wool will leave a little bit of grunge behind. All I'm trying to do here is brighten it up a little bit. I'm not trying to do a final polish because it's going to go back into the bath. And there's no magic to this. I'm not trying to overbrush it, I'm just trying to give it a little bit of a polish. Make sure I keep that in camera here for you. I'm not too concerned about the inside here in terms of polish, because that's the part that will fit over the boot for the air intake from the air filter canister. Anyway. You don't have to overthink this. Just try to brighten it up a little bit. It gives you a chance to see how it's plating also at the same time. I'm going to use a clean fabric rag, shop rag, an old t-shirt of mine. I'll clean it up a little bit here. See how bright we can get it. If you notice black residue showing up on your cloth, whatever you're using your rag to wipe the part down, I would suggest you go and clean it with acetone or brake cleaner again to get it nice and clean. That residue might suggest there's contamination on the part. So we got a little ways to go yet. We're not certainly done with it. I think what I'm going to do for this next round is I'm going to reverse. That is, I'm going to do that in terms of suspension. Now where that wire touches, of course, it won't plate. You have to keep that in mind, but I will alternate positions like this. Put it back in the bath. Reattach the power, and we're back in business. Again, you can watch the bath, and if you're pushing too much current, you'll see very active bubbling going on. That is that off-gassing I referenced earlier. I like to see just ever so slightly see some bubbles. It takes a minute or two for that to occur. Ever so slightly see some bubbling occurring. But more importantly, I watch the color of the part and compare that to the current draw on the power supply. And the coloring and the pace of plating dictates how much current I push to the part. Again, we're going to wait here probably 20, 30 minutes, and I'll bring you back for the next clean. Well, it's been about 30 minutes or so since we set this up and let it run. Note the current is about 0.40 amps. I haven't really fiddled with that much. I've pretty much left that alone. I might have tweaked it here and there. But we'll go ahead and pull the part out of the bath. I have rotated the part a couple of times. I used a pair of clean forceps, and I just gently moved the part like this, back and forth. Let me put my gloves on here a minute so I can handle it. See a little sign right there of overcooking just a touch. That's not uncommon, so you just have to plan on that happening from time to time. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the wire, suspension wire. I'm going to wash this, wire brush it, and then decide whether to continue on with the plating. So I'll be right back. Well, there you can start to get a sense of what it's looking like. It's brightening up quite nicely, actually. I think what I'm going to do, just for grins and giggles, pardon me if I bump the camera here with my arm. I think for grins and giggles what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse this off, wipe it off, put it back in the bath, probably run it another 15 or 20 minutes, and call it good on this part. And then we'll talk about what's next, if anything. In other words, what would be my next step if I wanted to polish it further than what you see here. So I'm going to go ahead and doesn't really make any difference where at this point I think where I put the wire. Put it back in the bath like we have had before, and reconnect the power. And I think you can see off the side we're drawing 0.39 amps. We're right about where we're at before. So we'll let this cook here for another 20 minutes, and then we'll bring it back. More like 45 minutes since I started this. I went out to pull the mower deck off my compact diesel tractor, and it took a little longer than I was expecting. I could do some fall maintenance to put it away for the winter. I did come in and rotate this once or twice during the process, but it's been about 45 minutes or so. And I think we're just going to call it at this point and say we've plated as much as we're going to on this part. If you look over there at the readout, I'm running at about 0.38 amps right now on the current flow. So we'll go ahead and kill the power. At this point now, since I'm not intending to continue plating, I don't really need to worry about wearing gloves anymore. You can see I get a little bit of a build up right there. That was probably closest to one side or the other. When you place your part in the solution or the bath, I try to position it equally from all sides of where the anode sits. It's not always possible to be perfect with that, as you can see here at a little buildup. But nothing that can't be taken care of here shortly. So let's go ahead and see if I can't get this wire off. There we go. Easier said than done. I'll go rinse this in fresh water and I'll be right back. Now what I'm going to do is start to polish it. Now when we polish, there's a number of ways you can do this. I quite often will start with a fine wire brush like this and just get some of the worst of the buildup, like you see right where my thumb is, off. You can throw it in a tumbler, a parts tumbler, which I have. I probably won't with these parts. If I had a bunch of parts to polish, I'd throw them in a tumbler for probably 1 to 2 days. But in this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to hand do it like you see right here. So I'm going to hit this with a brush, like you see. Then I will come back with probably either very fine steel wool or fine steel wool, 3/0 or 4/0 steel wool, and finish the polish, then maybe do a little wipe down from there. So let me go ahead and polish this up here a bit, and then I'll bring you back and we'll finish off this video on zinc plating. Well, I've just about finished polishing the part. Started with a fine wire brush. This is 3/0 steel wool. It's just a matter of brushing it like this gently, trying to bring the shine up a little bit. Work your way around. And I'm going to finish off with some Never Dull wadding polish. I use this quite a bit for this kind of thing. It's real gentle, and it does a really nice job of cleaning. And you'll see it's going to turn a little bit black right there as we go. And you can use this pretty much as many times as you want. As it gets black, you'll end up throwing the polishing pad away and tearing off more. And what you're trying to do is just clean out the pores. You could also wash this in like acetone if you wanted to. That'd work pretty well also. And just do a good wipe down. Like that. And then take clean paper towel, shop rag, whatever. See what comes off of it. And just polish it up. Like that. I don't overdo the polishing, to be honest with you. I try to get them clean and reasonably shiny. but I've seen a lot of variation in the quality of plating from OEM on the bikes, and sometimes it's very, very polished, almost looks like chrome. Other times it's quite dull, almost like that. So I try to end up somewhere in between. So there's the part replated. Remember, we started with something that looked a bit like that, and we ended up with this. So that's the basic process that I use for plating, zinc plating. I also do nickel plating, rarely anymore. Years ago I used to do more nickel. I can nickel plate. I still have the solution for nickel plating right there, but I just don't have a need to do it much. The process is virtually identical to what you just saw for all practical purposes, but that's the process that I use to zinc plate or re-zinc plate parts. Now what I'll need to do is go ahead and do the second clamp and the screws, the 5mm screws, which I have. They're in very good condition. They just need to be replated to go with these clamps, and then they will be ready to install back on the bike as well. That's it for this video. Any thoughts, questions, concerns, feel free to drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching. Late fall 2019, and as you can see, we're getting a little light snow. And so it begins. Just the beginning of about 5 months worth of crappy weather. It's about 35 degrees Fahrenheit, just above 0 Celsius outside right now. We're supposed to get an inch or two of snow in the next couple of days, rain snow mix, but they're talking an inch or two accumulation, 3 to 4 centimeters worth of snow or so, and then stay cold for the next week or so. So we'll see. I still wanted to mow one more time before I pull my mower deck off my tractor to service both the mower deck and the tractor itself for the winter. Don't know whether I'll get a chance to do that. I might just have to go ahead and pull the deck and be done with it.